the Russian one?
I can saw he's online, but I cannot
Mr.
hear
Raja, would
his
you like
voice.
to speak a few words so we can hear you from the channel?
Hey, hey, Ian.
Yes?
Yeah, through the chat, the interpreter said it work.
Okay.
So,
Mm.
shall we stop all test rehearsal and then back to the main site to the MC, so she can prepare to the formal start of today's session because it's close to 9 o'clock already. Shall we to the site? Shall we ask the Shall we ask the MC to prepare for the start of today? Hey, Ian. Hello, hey, Ian.
Check. Good morning from Seoul. To our distinguished speakers and guests, welcome to the 2021 ASEAN+3 HRD Summit. To those of you physically here at the forum grounds, as well as those of you joining us from YouTube Live and Zoom, we welcome you as well. Thank you for joining us for another day of important learning exchange on the future of work. I'm Eunice Kim. It is my distinct pleasure to serve as your MC today. 인사드리겠습니다. 저는 오늘 진행을 맡은 김윤희입니다. Before we begin, a housekeeping note. Many of you are joining us on Zoom, and we are providing language service in 3 different languages, English, Korean, as well as Mongolian. Now, if you are on Zoom, you may see a Russian option. That is actually the Mongolian option, so if that is what you're looking for, please do select the Russian option. So if everyone is settled, let's go ahead and kick off our day 2 of the forum. I would like to invite to the stage our first moderator, Professor Jin-gu Lee from the Korea University of Education and Technology. He will be taking us through a study of the theme Building a Green, Resilient, and Inclusive TVET System in the Post-COVID Era. Please welcome Professor Lee to the stage.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Jin-gu Lee. I'm a professor at Korea University of Technology and Education. I think it is very honorable time, and I think it is very happy to be here as a moderator in this great session. Maybe today we are talking about very important issues regarding TVET system. As far as I know, yesterday we have talked already the challenges of Tibet situation, institutions before and during the pandemic. And related to this issue, today we are going to talking about the second issue after the pandemic, how to respond to this situation in Tibet system for several Asian countries. So we have a second theme, building a green, resilient, and inclusive Tibet system in the post-COVID era. In this topic, we have a very excellent presentations we have prepared. Today, we have 3 presentations will be delivered, first 3, and then we are going to have a 10 minutes break, and then we are going to provide the cases, the Asian and then the European countries, how to react the pandemic situation, the Tibet system. I'm going to introduce then first 3 presentations and briefly. First 3 presentations, we have firstly the title, Reimagine a Skill Development for Inclusive Recovery, a Global Overview by Victoria Levin. And then secondly, Robert Smart will be giving us the titled speeches, titled Ability-Based Assessment, Green, Inclusive, and Fairly. And then also, lastly, we have the presentation titled Opportunities and Challenges for High Activity by Victoria Keys. Especially Victoria Keys' presentation will be delivered via video clip because of the time framework. We don't have enough time. We are going to start the first presentation. Maybe Victoria Levin, are you ready? Yes, I cannot see her. So I'm going to briefly introduce Victoria Levin. She is working for World Bank, and she is working as a senior economist and a scale global lead. We are going to talking about several issues, a global overview regarding the TB system after pandemic. Please give a big hand for Victoria Levin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation and for this kind introduction. Please give me a second to share the screen. Can you please confirm that, that you can see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. So I'm very excited to be here. This is actually the second HRD forum that I'm very honored to present at. Last year, I spoke to the audience about how technical and vocational education and training institutions and systems around the world responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. But this year, what I want to do is look towards the future and actually talk about how we can make sure that TVET and skills development systems more generally can respond to the economic recovery, and to make sure that this recovery is indeed strong and inclusive. So first, I wanted to give a little bit of motivation and touch upon why we at the World Bank engage with countries on the skills development agenda. We do this because we consider skills development essential for human capital accumulation and economic growth. So the mega trends of the recent decades, globalization and technological transformation, basically, they have propelled skills to the top of many of our clients' development agendas. This is due to the changing nature of work, whereby routine skills are being automated and non-routine skills, non-routine tasks, such as problem solving and creativity, are on the rise everywhere around the world. But while the demand for these new skills has been rising, the supply looks like is not really keeping up. And we know this because employers in many developing countries tell us that inadequately prepared workforce is actually in the top half of all the constraints that they experience in running their business. Importantly, as countries develop, as they proceed along their development trajectory, these skills constraints are even more likely to happen. And this is because skills are essential for accelerating the structural transformation, which is another way of saying they're key for their reallocation of economic activity from agriculture to industry to services. So we also think about skills as essential for providing this virtuous cycle towards economic growth, with basically investment for skills can potentially lead to productivity growth and foreign direct investment, which then implies that there's more and better jobs in the economy. And these more and better jobs provide the resources for families and for the government to invest in more education and training for their citizens. And then these investments again lead to higher employability and productivity and better skills in the future. So this is why skills are so important to countries' economic growth. And this is also why we at the World Bank support these investments around the world. But what skills are we talking about when we talk about skills? And more importantly, which skills are increasingly demanded by employers around the world? When we think and talk about skills at the World Bank, we usually have a picture like this at the back of our minds, with skills divided into 3 buckets. The first is cognitive skills, and this includes the foundational cognitive skills of literacy and numeracy, as well as what we call higher order cognitive skills of creative thinking and problem solving. The second bucket is technical skills, which are occupation specific and which are usually, but not always, fostered in technical and vocational education and training or post-secondary education, or they could be acquired on the job. The third bucket is what we call socio-emotional skills. Some people call them soft skills, non-cognitive skills, social-behavioral skills, or life skills. They go by many names. These are the skills that help people navigate personal and social situations effectively. And they encompass beliefs, personality traits, attitudes, and behaviors. So what another skill that you see in front of you actually is cross-cutting, and this is digital skills. And the reason why we consider them cross-cutting is, if you think about it, digital skills call on cognitive skills, technical skills, and social-emotional skills. And what employers want to see in graduates is a combination in this balanced skill set, and they want to see more and more of these graduates coming out of the education and training system. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic affected the demand for some of those skills, particularly social-emotional skills of adaptability and resilience, and of course, digital skills, which became simply essential for being able to continue to work and continue to learn during lockdowns. But what COVID-19 also did is it disrupted the skills development systems around the world. And at the last forum, I discussed with you the joint ILO UNESCO World Bank survey that we conducted of TVET providers, policymakers, and social partners. And the reason why we conducted this survey is to understand how the COVID-19 pandemic affected TVET providers and how TVET institutions and systems responded to the crisis. By now, the report with these findings can be found online, and I encourage all of you to take a look. Now, one of the findings that we had in this report is that TVET institutions and systems were uniquely challenged by the COVID-19 pandemic, because when education centers and businesses closed, this unique focus of TVET on practical, hands-on learning was very hard to replicate through remote learning modalities. Another finding that we had is that we saw a very uneven distribution of responses to the crisis, with higher income countries being much better able to switch to remote learning modalities, and higher income students, even in developing countries, being more able to continue learning, which of course exacerbated the pre-existing inequalities that were there before. But despite these challenges, another thing we saw during the crisis is intense period of creativity and innovation. And actually yesterday, during the first session of the forum, we saw some of these examples from countries in East Asia and the Pacific of this accelerated take-up of innovative approaches. So the two things that the pandemic did were as follows. They demonstrated and actually exposed the weaknesses of TVET institutions and systems. But on the other hand, they showed that rapid change is indeed possible. Now, how do we ensure that skills development systems can learn the lessons of COVID-19 and can undertake the much needed structural reforms so that they can support an inclusive recovery? Well, there's no one-size-fits-all approach, but there are 5 principles that can help move the skills development systems in the right direction, and I will discuss each of them in turn. The first is market orientation. We really have to put employers in the driver's seat. I noticed actually in yesterday's session that virtually all the countries that conducted the training assessment project included some type of improved linkages with the private sector in their policy recommendations. And there are multiple ways to strengthen engagement with employers and training providers. And the choice of which of these engagement modalities to take up, of course, would depend on the country context, and particularly on the size and the composition of the private sector. For example, employers can participate in work-based learning component of the training programs by hosting trainees. They could also help with professional training of TVET teachers and instructors, or they could even allow their employees to become these types of instructors on a part-time or seconded basis. They can also provide critical information about the local labor market needs and advise on curriculum and instruction. The second principle is related to the inclusion aspect that was also often discussed during the first session yesterday. Skills development programs attract a variety of learners of different ages, different education and skills levels, and different experiences. Such diversity of profiles has to be reflected in a tailored approach to training delivery. Some learners come to TVET, unfortunately, with some gaps in their foundational cognitive or social-emotional skills. Now, the good news is that neuroscience tells us that skills can be developed throughout one's life. So that means that the gaps that students bring to the TVET programs can be remediated during training. But this can only happen if the skills training programs are science and evidence informed and that they tailor their approaches to the population that they're teaching. Learners may also need complementary services or alternative pathways to achieve their learning goals. So for example, the take-up and completion of skills training by female learners is greatly helped by provision of childcare at the training sites. The third principle has to do with the transition of skills from diplomas to stacked or micro credentials. And this is actually another way to increase flexibility of skills training programs and to make them and to adapt them to learners who, for example, had to join the workforce during COVID-19 to support family income. So a modular approach, of course, would imply changes to the course offerings, curricular assessment, and the preparation of the teacher workforce. But on the other hand, it would reduce inefficiencies and waste that can come with early dropout from the program. Because with stackable credentials, students who have to leave during the training program can actually demonstrate their competencies by the completed modules. The fourth principle has to do with blurring the line between classroom space and workspace. Work-based learning, apprenticeships, internships, and work environment simulations provide an opportunity to apply and practice the skills that are learned in the classroom space. And this is, of course, essential to make sure that new skills are acquired sustainably, and this very much accords with the science of adult learning. But also it provides exposure to the workplace, which fosters social-emotional skills, and it allows students to build these professional networks that will actually facilitate their transition from school to the labor market. Finally, the last principle is the use of data and feedback to improve performance. And this, I saw that this came up a lot yesterday, actually, as one area for improvement in the TVET systems of East Asia and the Pacific. Timely and user-friendly data on skills needs can shape students' career aspirations and expectations, and it can help to inform their educational decisions. As you can see on the graph here, and this is just an example in Bulgaria, the downside risk of some of the specializations is much larger in some of the specializations than in others. And it is important for students or aspiring students to know this type of information. So skills programs can track graduates' performance through tracer studies and can perform periodic evaluations of their programs to help the skills ecosystem understand what works, learn from what doesn't work, and remain agile. Now, linking financing to results can also be an effective way to incentivize performance, particularly when results can be reliably measured. In conclusion, I would like to remind you that this presentation, of course, focused on TVET and short-term skills programs, But of course, we need to remember that skills development happens across the life cycle, and it is a cumulative process. And what that means is that strong foundations are very important in the acquisitions of skills later on. For this reason, it is essential to have inclusive and high quality early childhood education programs and to ensure comprehensive primary and secondary education. And finally, the key feature of best skills training programs is their potential for adaptability to changing skills needs. And in our challenging and uncertain circumstances, this implies that skills programs can really contribute to a strong and inclusive economic recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and Victoria Levin. In this presentation, she suggested 5 principles to enhance TBS system for each country. So maybe we need to consider these principles, how to adapt each country's situation to provide the better Tibet training programs. Thank you for your presentation. And we are going to next presentation. The next presentation will be the Robert Smart. Maybe one of major research interest is my research interest is the skill assessment. I think skill assessment is really important. How to assess the trainees' competency. This is maybe very important issues in the Tibet area. So he will provide a good presentation regarding this one, especially focused on after a pandemic. So he will provide the presentation titled "Building Back Better Skill Development System Through Tibet Reform" under this theme. His presentation title "Ability-Based Assessment: Green, Inclusive, and Fair." So we will give a big hands for him. And before the presentation, maybe you have some announcement? Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, Robert Smart, are you ready? So we give a big hands for him.
Thank you very much, everyone. And a very good day to you all. And I would like to thank all those involved in giving me the opportunity today to talk about my experiences in skills assessment and present this new way, potentially, of assessing and, of course, presenting these skills to employers. I believe transparency and validity will be critical to aid recruitment and present well-trained workers to the workforce. So on the next slide, please. I would like to reflect a little bit and have some points to consider about what it is that assessment should be. Working in industry now for nearly 40 years, we feel that in some cases, colleges, universities can't act fast enough. They can't give the specific skills, stroke training that industry sometimes needs. And even sometimes the standards by the time that they're issued could potentially be out of date. This new collaborative partnership model, working with employers and training providers, is going to be critical to how we can portray what these very capable young people and people transitioning from a different occupation to new occupations can showcase their capabilities. I think through COVID, the human behavior has changed. If we take online shopping, we're actually now happy to pay extra to get things done faster. Nobody likes to wait anymore. This actually impacts our real world perception of how education and assessment should and could be delivered to us in bite-sized chunks to show that we are ready to enter the workforce based on our abilities. And that's fine if the employers know the skills that they can do. But more importantly, I believe, the ones that they cannot. When we do traditional exams and assessment, there is a pass mark. The pass mark, which can vary depending on the qualification, has an element of acceptable wrong. 30% wrong, 20% wrong. But the employer has no idea what that is. Neither normally does the student. And the student may have answered it what they believe to be correct, but was wrong. And that in itself carries risk into the workplace. So my presentation is about how we can change the way we assess and how we present the assessment to an employer to enable them to make better and informed decisions. Now on the next slide, is the current assessment model tired? Do we need to get a new message out that in fact it's okay not to know everything? It's okay to have gaps in your skills, because if we can see what they are, no one should be embarrassed, and we can offer training and support to fill them. If we're talking about lifelong learning, let's include lifelong validation of our skills at the same time. Coming at this from the assessment perspective, we actually know that learning is amazing today. You can study using a whole range of different media types, platforms, YouTube, you name it, and it can be fun and engaging and 24 hours a day. But what about assessment? If assessment was enjoyable as this, you're going to get the best out of people. Currently, assessment today could be unfair on many, and an exam on a given day determines what their whole life could become. I believe that disadvantages so many people. If I need to sit an exam for career progression, many don't bother or perform badly, sometimes because of a stressful past experience. Even large companies like Google, Apple, IBM are dropping credentials and engaging in skill tests for applicants so that they can actually employ the right people. In 2021, jobs without qualifications jumped up 850% on a Google search. So people are looking for employment. So on the next slide, how do we evolve to provide and evolve to survive? Let's reflect a moment on the transparency we need here, the credential itself, which is the result of the assessment. When we consider about the credential and movement in education and academia to put more emphasis on validating the credential through blockchain and other forms, which is likely to consume more power, which isn't particularly very green, perhaps that's not the answer. If the qualification itself is you, the person, that you are able to present yourself in such a way that there is no need for this additional technology other than you portraying yourself, perhaps through an e-credential or a skills passport. We've talked about micro digital badges and stackable qualifications, but imagine presenting a credential to an employer which has the assessment evidence within it that the determinations were made. The employer has full transparency. But in order to do that, we have to change the way that people are assessed. So on the next slide, if we look at this new model of assessment that we've actually been doing now, we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. We've currently done 2 million qualifications without anyone sitting an exam, because it knows what your gaps are. It shows them. The risk is reduced. Hiring is actually higher when an employer knows what risk they're taking on. This model overcomes things like dyslexia, racial, gender bias, and ethnic barriers, because it's all based on the fairness, what you can do. It can really empower change. Assessment is now self-reflective in its first model. It's on demand. It's pushing people to improve themselves before submitting it to be viewed. This instills confidence, learning, and personal goals to be set, but it's also okay not to know everything. These proof of applied skills, knowledge, understanding, behaviors, risk, language, and communication, and show it to any prospective employer. So by changing the way we assess and present this to an employer, I think could remove one of the single biggest barriers to meaning in employment. And how do we go about doing that? Now on the next slide, we'll talk about what we've been doing now for nearly 30 years. We judge ourselves every day, so give them the tool to do that. There is nothing more powerful than you being critical of yourself in your own performance. Allow them to capture video on their mobile phone, audio, images, documents, anything that they think is relevant to prove that they can do something, not just once, maybe several times, but we'll come to that in a minute. But that's nothing remarkable. We can all do that through various things now. But how you manage it and assess it is key. Imagine capturing video on your mobile, reviewing it in an online portal, and as you watch and review the video footage, as you see and hear something that meets an objective, a curriculum outcome, or a task, or an objective, you simply touch it and you go, oh yeah, I've covered that, and you touch it and you carry on watching the footage, claiming skills, knowledge, and understanding and everything. And when you click save, the technology takes all those references, extracts out the particular moments of when you've demonstrated all of those capabilities, links them to the curriculum so that any validator or assessment who can now be anywhere in the world can see instantly in any video clip when you've demonstrated that skill or capability. So in COVID, the use of our technology in Validate was unaffected because you didn't have to travel. The evidence of your ability came to you. And of course, if you're doing it consistently several times, you're going to get consistent and valid behavior. You can reject something if you don't think it's appropriate. You can ask them to do it again. You can do it live by watching through Facebook, through whatever, a whole raft of different means, because the assessment is now on demand. And strangely enough, it's not that time consuming. We managed to do the unthinkable in the US last year and this year, that every single organization using Validate, and when they were capturing evidence using this tool, they still had to sit the state exam because we're not quite there yet. But every person who failed the state exam had their exam overturned because of the evidence in Validate within 48 hours, because it's legally defensible. Proof you can do something as opposed to a written exam. And I think that is a real fundamental shift in how we behave as humans, especially through COVID. If I want to know something, I go to YouTube and watch it, and then I go and do it. So why can't people present evidence in the same way? So there's lots of additional tools within the product. I mean, I'm not going to go into all of them now. That was just one example. But we focus on making the human the credential, your skills passport to the world. Now, on the next slide, very briefly, this actually is not necessarily new. It's been around for a long time. The very first e-portfolio skills assessment, which I'm actually going to wave up to the screen now for those of you that can see it, has 1995 written on it. So it's been around for a while. But going back to my original point, sometimes things take time. Working with the Senate in the US, we changed legislation so that mastery can now be used for entry into any regulated profession without hours or a high stakes exam. We're running in excess of 94% achievement retention rates in the hundreds of thousands of apprenticeships that we do globally from Canada, the US, the UK, and other. We do immigration. Imagine having a tool like this 6 months prior to entry to a country where you can now show what you can do before arrival, and you only need to be trained on the gaps when you arrive to get you into the workforce quicker and faster. The advantages go on. Now, the last little thing I will leave you with on the next slide, and it's more of a bit of relief in the seriousness of assessment, is thankfully it's a really good job we don't issue a driving license based on just passing a theory test alone. So why do we do that in educational assessment? Well, it's a good job we don't in many respects, but if we did, well, we can see what would happen. But I also think that there needs to be a shift in the understanding of what the word competent means. It's defined in an ISO standard, and it means that their knowledge, skills, personal attributes, and qualifications subject to a job or certification is examined. That's all the attributes. So to determine someone's competency on an exam, which predominantly is knowledge-based, causes a degree of confusion. And on that note, on my last slide, I want to thank you all for listening. I could have said an awful lot more, and I'm now going to pass you back to the chair for the next speaker, Kamsahamnida. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert Smart, for your presentation. He introduced a new way of skill assessment, such as e-portfolio, by using technology. Maybe I think this will be one of the main issues in the assessing competencies of the student in the future. Thank you for your presentation. We are going to move on to the next presentation. Next presentation, the speakers is Victoria Key. She is going to present using the pre-recorded video because of time differences. Please watch Victoria's presentation for 10 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to share with you some insights from our work on professional tertiary education, or higher vet as it is called in some countries, conducted over the past year at the OECD. Why are we focusing on resilience? Why is it so important? Because labour market and skills needs are changing rapidly. Automation is expected to replace or drastically reshape many jobs, and occupations targeted by VET are particularly exposed as they often target those middle skill jobs which are being lost. This means that many workers will need to upskill or reskill in the course of their careers. Addressing climate change will also affect skills needs. Some sectors like carbon, oil or gas will lose jobs, while others focusing on renewable energies or responses to climate change, such as flood or water management, are likely to grow. This again will create a further need for reskilling and upskilling, and some changes, such as those imposed by the COVID crisis, are simply unexpected. TVET systems need to adapt and respond to this shifting environment. While predicting the precise scale and implications of these changes is hard, one certainty is change. TVET systems therefore need to build resilience into their design so that the supply of skills can adapt rapidly and ensure that no one is left behind. How well those technical vocational skills are developed also matters. In this area, at the moment, we have little comparative data, but at the OECD, we are now exploring options for a comparative assessment of vocational skills. In the next few minutes, I will focus on 3 issues. First, the potential role that higher TVET can play in national skill systems. Second, I will focus on how to ensure inclusiveness in higher TVET. And I will finish by discussing how to build an agile system able to respond rapidly. Let me start with the potential of higher TVET. When we look across OECD countries, we see a hugely diverse landscape with very different roles played by TVET programs. Some offer preparation for a first job, such as in Belgium, Slovenia, and France. And in others, the higher TVET system offers upskilling for existing professionals. In Switzerland, for example, several years of work experience are required, and the average age of students is 28. In many countries, higher TVET programs play a crucial role in providing an opportunity to further learning to graduates of upper secondary VET. This figure shows the share of upper secondary graduates among that have pursued a vocational program. And especially in countries where a large share of students pursue VET, it is essential to provide programs that are adapted and attractive to VET graduates. One particularly interesting example is the Netherlands, where about half of upper secondary students pursue a vocational program. Here, a separate type of institution offers higher TVET, the Universities of Applied Science, which offer programs like tourism management, logistics engineering, or applied data science. And this sector has grown very rapidly since the 1980s. The number of students was multiplied by 3 over this period. And the Universities of Applied Science have played a key role in the massification of higher education. They have facilitated access to tertiary education to a more diverse range of students, often from a more modest social background. Let me move on to the issue of inclusiveness. Resilient TVET systems need to ensure that no one is left behind by change. Rapid changes in the labour market mean that some will be left with skills that are no longer needed and will need to upskill or reskill, and others might seek advanced or specialised skills as their career progresses. For higher TVET systems, this has 2 implications. First, higher TVET must be adult-friendly to support workers who seek to develop their skills. This may require mechanisms for the recognition of prior learning, to give credit to skills acquired through work experience. Increased flexibility, for example, through part-time learning and modularized programs, can also help adults engage in higher TVET. Second, it means that higher TVET needs to accommodate the learning needs of a more diverse range of students. One challenge that we can see in our data is dropout. Students who come from upper secondary VET have lower completion rates in higher education in many countries than students who pursue general upper secondary education. Now, the data you can see in this graph are not only for higher TVET, but higher education generally, but there is a strong overlap. In many countries, VET graduates tend to pursue mainly higher TVET or professional tertiary education programs. Now, there might be various reasons for dropout, but weaknesses in literacy and numeracy skills are often viewed as a key factor. And data from PISA show that in many ASEAN member countries, a large proportion of students have weak reading and mathematics skills at the age of 15. For example, the share of 15-year-old students with weak reading skills is over 50% in Brunei, over 70% in Indonesia, and 80% in the Philippines. Now, these basic skills are really essential because they underpin the capacity to learn. So higher TVET programs need to offer support. They need to help students catch up with any gaps they might have so that they can successfully complete their program. One interesting example in this area is Norway. In Norway, vocational colleges offer short programs which last between 6 months and 2 years full-time and mostly built on an earlier vocational qualification. Adults who lack a formal qualification can enter through the recognition of prior learning. And the colleges offer various flexible modes of study. About half of the programs are delivered online, for example, and part-time programs are very common. About 2/3 of students study part-time and combine studies with work. And to help students with reading or writing difficulties, the learning content is also available in audiobooks. Now, moving on to the last topic, the agile VET system. Resilience requires an agile VET system, able to respond rapidly to emerging skills requirements. In the face of change, TVET systems often display some inertia. It is usually cheaper and easier to teach the same content in the same way as the last year. But this risks leaving the TVET system lagging behind the most dynamic sectors of the economy. Countries therefore need to design TVET systems where employers are strongly engaged in the updating of existing programs and qualifications and the development of new ones. Now, matching the supply of TVET to demand is not easy, and financial returns are not the only factor influencing student choices. In this chart, we can see the share of new entrants to short cycle tertiary programs. So these are 1 or 2 year programs after upper secondary education. And in the horizontal axis, we can see the relative earnings of short cycle tertiary graduates compared to upper secondary graduates. We can see, for example, that arts and humanities attract the same share of entrants as ICT, despite much higher returns to ICT qualifications. Now, one way of linking higher TVET to labour market needs is to closely connect it to employers and employment opportunities. In Switzerland, for example, professional examinations are created and updated by employers collectively, together with relevant public authorities. These qualifications are based on a single examination. There is no mandatory classwork, for example, although participants typically pursue optional preparatory courses. But there is a close link with employment. Having several years of relevant work experience is required, and most people prepare the examination while working in their field and with the support of their employer. And how are programs and qualifications updated? In the field of ICT, for example, every 2 or 3 years, the relevant employer bodies undertake a complete analysis of the field, revise the content of existing programs, and consider whether new qualifications should be introduced or some should be dropped. For example, this led to the introduction of the digital collaboration specialist recently. Now, to conclude, I would like to highlight the main points I've just mentioned. Higher TVET has the potential to play a key role in supplying skills for the green transition and the economic recovery. It can play different functions, and in many countries, it plays a key role in offering a learning opportunity to graduates of upper secondary VET. Inclusiveness is essential. TVET systems must ensure that no one is left behind by rapidly changing labour markets. So TVET programs need to provide access to a wide range of students and offer them adequate help to complete their program and move on to successful careers. Finally, agile higher TVET programs need to be able to adapt to changing skills needs, which requires the active engagement of employers in the design and the updating of programs and qualifications. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for Victoria Key's presentation. She is currently working for OECD as a policy analyst. I think the reskilling and upskilling are the emerging issues for the digital transformation era, as well as a pandemic era. So we need to promote adult learners' competencies by using the reskilling and upskilling approaches. Yeah. We ended the first session, but we are a little bit behind the schedule. So we were originally a 10 minutes break. However, we don't have enough time. So we are going to have a 5 minutes break time instead of 10 minutes. And after that, we are going to talk about the second part. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yi. Yes, special thanks to Victoria Key, Robert Smart, and Victoria Levin on those ideas on TVET reform toward building back better. And as Professor Yi mentioned, we will be taking a 5-minute break now to let some of those ideas really soak in. The time is now 10:48, so we'll gather in 5 minutes at 10:53. So please go ahead and take that time to stretch, get a drink. There's coffee and refreshments on offer. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Attention, please. We will be resuming the 2021 Asean+3 Hrd Forum in 2 minutes. This is your 2-minute warning. Please begin making your way back to your seats so that we can begin the program again promptly. We will now begin the program, so if anyone is outside, please come on in now. Welcome back. Did everyone have a good break? All right, it was a really quick one, and we welcome back Professor Lee Jin-gu to the stage to resume our next round of distinguished speakers on country cases this time.
You're welcome back. I'm sorry for not giving enough break time. So we are going to move on to the next phase. In this part, we can see 4 different countries' cases, including China, Australia, Singapore, and Bangladesh, on green resilience and inclusive Tibet. Maybe I think this is a good opportunity to understand how to react to pandemic situation, and the cases will give us good implications for Tibet development. We have 4 presenters here. First presenter is Yufeng Liu. She is working for Director of International Corporations, Ministry of Education in China. She will give us the presentation titled Green Skills Developed in China. Please give a big hand for her. Yeah.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Could you share my screen? I could not share my PPT now. Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hold on, please.
Okay, but maybe I need.
Professor
Yeah.
Liu, do you need us to share your screen?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I could not. I still could not now. Could you give me?
Yes. Please
Nice.
give us 1 moment, and we will share your screen from our side.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
And please click host account at the top of the participant list. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Professor Liu, we are ready.
You are ready, but I still could not share my PPT.
Dr. Liu, are you planning to share your screen? We already shared it from our end.
Oh, okay, okay. So, okay. Then could you please share my PPT now? Okay, now I found it. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for World Bank for inviting me to attend this very significant forum. Today, I want to share some information about green skills development in Tibet, in PR China, which is also very important for our Chinese people. Next slide, please. So today, my presentation will include in 3 aspects. First of all, it's the demand on green skills development. Currently, secondary is about current status, and the third one is about the possible future of green skills development in China. Next slide. As every one of you may know, Chinese economy developed very fast, especially after the 21st century. From this chart, you could find GDP per capita and GDP total going very rapidly. At the beginning of this century, our GDP per capita was less than 1,000 US dollar. But after 20 years, Chinese GDP per capita more than 10,000, 10 times, more. So our GDP, total GDP, go to the second of the world, just behind USA. Next slide, please. However, for a long time, due to the low level of technology, Chinese economic development model is not very green, which resulting in the destruction of the environment. Although the Chinese government has implemented strict environmental protection policies for more than a decade, but environmental problems such as air quality still exist. For instance, according to the Bulletin on Chinese Ecological Environment in 2020, the air quality in 337 cities, just less than 60% of these cities reach air quality standards. More than 40% of these cities, the quality exceeding standards. Of course, this air pollution also including water and soil, etc. Next slide, please. On the one hand, China, though China is a very big country, we have the largest population in the world, and also we have lots of resources. But if we talk about per capita, so our resources are relatively insufficient. It's not enough. For instance, Chinese per capita share of water resources is just 1/4 of the world average. And our per capita cultivation land is just 2/5 of the world average. And our capital forest is just 21% of the world average. So next slide, please. So first with these challenges, China has chosen the path of sustainable development. This year, Chinese government issued the 14th five-year plan for national economic and social development of China and the long-term objective of 2035. And this plan asks for and swiftly implement the new development concept of innovation, coordination, green, openness, and sharing. And also ask for fully, accurately, and comprehensively run the new development concept through the whole process and the whole fields of development, which the new concept including green. Next slide, please. So actually, sustainable development policies not only appeared in the 14th plan. In last century, since the 9th five-year plan, Chinese government already put forward sustainable development strategies, and then continually since 1905 and the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th until now. So from these strategies, you could find very clearly in the 95 year just put forward sustainable development strategy. In the 10th 5-year, just at the beginning of this century, please come back. So we call for sustainable development ability, and 11th 5 put forward a resource saving and environmental friendly society, etc. Next slide, please. So, and also we awareness the importance of the world. We need to have a friendly world. So Chinese government strive to achieve carbon peak by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060 in the UN this year. Next slide. So what contribution can TVET make to the development of the society? Our answer is to develop green skills. So what does it mean of green skills? Green skills actually is a sustainable development skills. Anything related to technologies, knowledge, values, and attitudes needed by the labor force to support and promote the sustainable social, economic development and environmental friendly of industry, commerce, and the communities. And green skills is also universal skills and professional skills. Anything if related to minimize resource use, recognize opportunities for energy and resource utilization efficiency, reducing greenhouse gas emission, recycling, use environmental protection products, protecting the natural environment, etc. And if we greening skills as a professional skills, many reflected in the technology skills, value and attitudes that must be mastered to engage in green work or green occupations. So next slide, please. What kind of efforts of China make to develop green skills? According to my understanding, I think these many reflected in 3 aspects. Firstly, we revise our TVET catalog of TVET catalog programs. So this year, this catalog already published by Ministry of Education. Inside this catalog, we already renew the current programs and also put new programs which reflected the new green occupations for including secondary vocational education, high vocational education 3 years, and 4 years high vocational education. For instance, in agriculture, in the first industry, secondary vocational education, our high vocational education already have forest and grass ecological protection and resortation. For the higher vocational education in the first industry, we have intelligent agricultural technology programs, etc. So we have already put lots of new green programs in this new catalog. Next slide. So not only in the new catalog, but also we renew our teaching and learning standards of TVET programs. In secondary vocational education and the tertiary, or we call it a high vocational education, we already put green elements inside these programs. For instance, in teaching and learning standards of secondary vocational education programs, the specialty teaching and learning standards of the primary, secondary, and the tertiary all put forward the requirements of safety awareness, energy conservation, and environmental protection awareness. For higher vocational education programs in the teaching and learning standards, not only put forward the requirements of cultivating students' awareness of environmental protection and safety, but also put forward the requirements that students must master relevant knowledge and put relevant suggestions on curriculum offering. Next slide, please. So in the curriculum offered by different TVET institutes, some institutes they already including some greening elements, which include environmental protection and safety awareness, cost and efficiency awareness, resource conservation awareness, and ask for green behaviors. Next slide, please. So one thing I want to mention is that though we have made efforts to include greening elements inside our curriculum, inside our TVET, but these efforts are not systematic. One time we carried out a PEC project which called systematic greening development, greening skills development in TVET. So we developed this general contents list of green skills in TVET, which we focus on 3 dimensions: economy, environment, and society, and another 3 sub-dimensions: operation, technology, and administration. So finally, on the basis of the job analysis, and so we develop these 12 general contents list, including safe resources, classified domestic and work-related garbage, and following the safety openness, etc., and judge work and equipment problems, etc., etc., etc. So we try to put this general contents list into all teaching and learning standards and curriculum. Next slide, please. For instance, in Jiangsu Vocational Institute of Architectural Technology, we put these general contents into this program, so which include energy conservation, utilization, water saving and utilization, material save and utilization, operation management, indoor environment quality, etc. And each elements we put the green contents inside to green the whole program of the architecture. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned just now, and though green, we make some efforts in to green our TVET, but this efforts is not systematic. So because we lack of a strong mechanism in TVET to develop a curriculum, and also for us, green skills just environmental protection, but has no some other ideas, for instance, economy and society, etc. So forward-looking, we suggest to integrate green contents into the teaching and the learning standards and the curriculum for all TVET programs. I mean, not only just professional green skills, but all programs need to be introduced, need to include green elements. And then we need to develop the green skills of TVET teachers. The teachers, they need to have green skills, and then it's possible for them to develop students' green skills. And then put clear and specification policies to develop green skills. At the moment, the green awareness and some of the curriculum for TVET, just the students could choose, but this course are not compulsory. So we need to strengthen our policies to develop green skills, and finally, to provide incentive mechanism for green skills development in TVET system. For instance, we have a national skills competition. We should introduce this awareness to call for all TVET institute to develop green skills. Okay, next slide, please. That's all the information I would like to share with all of you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for your friend Lee's presentation. I agree with the environmental problem is critical in the future. And it is very interesting to provide a green skill program in China. I think this will be more and more important issues in the coming future. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
We don't have enough time, and we are going to move on to the next presentation. And next presentation will be titled Tibet Policies and Practices at National and Provisional Levels in Australia. And Craig Robertson will give us a presentation. Craig is currently a Chief Executive Officer in Victoria Skill Skill Authorities in Australia. Yeah, please be kind for him.
Good morning. It's a delight to be with you today, and I'm hoping that the central people can turn the slide presentation on now. Thank you. My presentation is going to ask the question, in economies and countries that are complex, with many industries, many that are in transition due to COVID, and therefore different levels of specialisation and so different levels of opportunity for citizens, how do you go about bringing about change to implement green skills or decarbonisation policies? And how do you do that to meet the requirements of consistency and quality across Australia? Next slide, please. This simply gives you a sense of the complexity of TVET in Australia. We have 8 states and territories that are autonomous, but they do seek to work together to deliver TVET. As you can see, that there is quite a number of TVET students in Australia. That represents 23.4% of the working age population, but often they are coming in for short courses rather than full qualification courses. So you can see the complexity and diversity even within that slide. If I go to the next slide, please. Here you can see that there is a wide range of organisations that deliver formal TVET training. And you can see that there's over about 4,000 organisations. There are private organisations, TAFEs, which are technical and further education institutes. There are a few of them, but they take most of the full-time students. Schools, community education providers. There are companies themselves that deliver vocational education and training, and universities. Next slide, please. So there is a lot of providers. How does the government go about meeting or working within that diverse construct to deliver priorities? And it is the principle of subsidiarity. There is quality oversight from a national organisation called ASQA, but there are then training standards that are set nationally, and then a provider delivers the course and then assesses and issues qualifications. There are three pillars that give us quality: national standards in our qualifications, a national framework for qualifications, and a national vet regulator. Next slide, please. What you can see from this slide is we have a strong industry influence over qualifications in Australia. And you can see there, across those four types, what we call training package qualifications are those that are formally defined by industry and are agreed nationally by industry for application. And so you can see that they drive most delivery in Australia. The issue being, what happens if that is a slow process? And we know the nature of innovation is growing faster and faster. Here's next slide, please. And here's somehow how we seek to be able to do that through our standards-based approach. As you can see on the right, we start with the needs of the occupation. Then we define competencies. And then we look at elements and performance criteria, often one per each competency. And then there are assessment requirements. So they are the qualification standards. They are national and defined by industry. But by having a standards approach, they can be delivered to suit local context. And so what you can see on the right there, it can be delivered within an institution, such as a TAFE, or it can also be delivered in the workplace. This allows some flexibility so that local requirements can be met, but also some assurance that basic standards of delivery and qualifications of standards and quality of delivery can be met. Next slide, please. But we're even finding that that model can't keep up with the pace of change that's going on in across the economy and across industries. And if you think then about needing to be able to be ready for green skills, then how do we think through that? Green skills is probably going to come in a couple of ways, where there's going to be stronger use of technology, but also stronger use of being able to understand how to essentially decarbonise production processes. Simply what this chart is showing, that we are going to be able to use what we call big data to actually being able to identify what are those skills that are required at the forefront of the innovation frontier. What we're doing through the Australian Skills Classification Instrument is using big data technologies to really identify those skills that are current and that are emerging. And therefore what we can do is then identify our training effort towards that, rather than being caught by a competency model that is defined from the top down and therefore can be easily out of date. Next slide, please. I wanted to be able to talk through a couple of priorities that are working in Australia at the moment. The first one is the Clean Economy Jobs and Skills Task Force. It's a 10-year workforce strategy exploring renewable energy, the circular economy practices, and climate change adaptation. In my role as the Chief Executive Officer of the Victorian Skills Plan, I chair that task force. And that's a 10-year strategy that we are adopting to be able to make sure that the state of Victoria within Australia has the requisite skills to adapt as climate change policies and technologies and service processes change, as we all seek to work towards zero net emissions by 2050, and that we equally try to accelerate our move towards that leading up to 2030. So there'll be significant industry restructuring, and it will need skills to go with that. Now, interestingly, I've mentioned two other initiatives here that are in other states and territories, and this sort of shows that with a standards-based model, particular priorities to particular provinces in Australia can be met. The one on the bottom left is the Queensland Defence, Maritime, Aerospace and Space Industry Skills Plan. This is an economic priority plan that the state of Queensland has developed, and they have organised particular strategies around skills to be able to support that. That notion can apply equally to green and adjusting industries that are seeking to adjust and decarbonise their production processes. And on the right is a report or a piece of work being done in terms of our manufacturing. One of the key elements that we need to be able to make sure that we can change and decarbonise our society and our economy is to move towards advanced manufacturing. And we need a new set of skills that can be able to help us there. So what you can see is, whilst there can be national approaches, there can be local priorities at a state and provincial level to be able to meet this objective. And I'm happy to conclude at that point and to finish with my final slide, which is my contact details. And what I'm hoping for you to be able to see out of this presentation is nationally, but even at a Victorian or state level, we can, in a complex economic construct with industries that are changing, we can use a standards-based approach to accelerate the adoption of green skills and green thinking through TVET. And we think in Australia that TVET contributes to 35 to 40% of the working age population. So if we can achieve that as a new way of thinking, we know that we can bring a clean economy to Victoria and Australia. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Craig, for your presentation. It is very interesting that skills in practices are transforming such as big data. In Korea, we have a similar situation. So we developed some K digital training program, and then we provide that training programs for the adult learners right now. Okay, thank you for your presentations. And next presentation will be given by Jack Min Todd. He is your senior director for industry and lifelong learning in Nanyang Polytechnic in Singapore. His presentation's topic is building an adaptive and resilient TVET system in a COVID environment in Singapore. Please give a big hand for him.
Thank you, Professor Lee. I hope everyone can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Good morning, everyone, and hello from Singapore. First of all, I'd like to thank World Bank for kindly inviting me to share our experiences in running a TVET system under a COVID environment in Singapore. So let me move on quickly to what I have to share. First of all, I think just a few words to mention about Nanyang Polytechnic. We are a public institution looking at both the pre-employment training for secondary school leavers as well as training for adult workers in the industry. So we have, as you see from the picture, we have 6 schools and we have 3 continuing education and training institutes, namely the Asian Culinary Institute, the Singapore Institute of Retail Studies, and the National Centre of Excellence for Workplace Learning. So we currently have about 1,400 full-time staff, and of which about 900 of them are academic staff. So in terms of the full-time students, currently about 13,000 who are pursuing a full-time 3-year diploma program with us. And let me move on next. Before COVID struck, we were already beginning to see some driving forces that were actually disrupting many things, including educational institutions. We see business models being changing. We see markets changing, the rise of e-commerce, for example, in the retail sector, how the hotels were affected by Airbnb and so on. And at the same time, we could see that there were major technology disruptions, including areas such as digitalization, artificial intelligence, and Industry 4.0. Then we got feedback from industry and also from employers that there was an increasing need for reskilling and upskilling to prepare for all these disruptions. But at the same time, while there were also job opportunities, but there were also skills and job mismatches, which meant that there were some people in the workforce who were looking for jobs, and there were jobs available, but they could not do a match because of the skills mismatch that we saw in the workforce. After COVID-19 struck, we found that, wow, things began to change even more. The pace of change was accelerated, meaning that you know, the things happening so fast that there were some companies who actually had difficulties in trying to cope with the change. While in the past, we urged more of the enterprises to transform digitally, and many of them were trying to do so, it became critical after COVID-19 struck that it's no longer a thing which is good to have, but it's actually critical to actually move forward quickly on this. And we found that we need to think out of the box, to innovate, to make sure that we are able to stay ahead, especially in the COVID situation. So let me share with you some of the key things that we did in order to have an adaptive and resilient TVET system. I could sum it up under 4 key areas. I think the first one would be programs and curriculum. What exactly are we doing to our programs and curriculum to make sure that we can be adaptive and resilient? Secondly, in terms of delivery and assessment, under the COVID situation, you know that for some cases, we have got lockdowns and we got restrictions as well. So how would this affect the delivery and assessment of our programs? The third one would be industry partnerships. This was critical. We felt that important enough for us to forge close partnerships with industry to make sure that we are kept up to date. And the last part I'd like to mention is that most important for us would be how to ensure that our staff continues to be relevant by making sure that they are continuously upgraded and reskilled along the way so that we can help others in the industry. For the first part, in terms of programs and curriculum, I think one of the first things we felt that there was a need to really make the programs a little bit more bite-sized and modular to make it easier. This was especially critical and crucial for the continuing education and training for adult workers. Many of them actually had to work from home or had other challenges. So how to actually make it more bite-sized and modular in order for them to follow up and then to have it make it easier for them to continue training. The second part I would like to mention is really looking at customized and needs-based training, especially on an industry-focused basis. So we have 2 parts. The first one is looking at verticals. On a sectoral basis, how do we address training programs or deliver training programs which are very peculiar to that sector, which may not be seen in other sectors? And on the second part, there were also critical and emerging areas we felt that could cut across industry verticals. This would be in data analytics, Industry 4.0, cybersecurity, and so on. So we began to look at some of the programs that we could offer and develop and offer them to industry at large. In terms of delivery and assessment, I'd like to share that we had in the past gone on to some online learning options, but with COVID-19, we actually have to accelerate and actually ensure that there were more options for blended learning, especially to be able to enhance learning engagement. And this was useful in order to make sure that there were less spread of COVID situations in a packed environment. Secondly, I would like to mention that in looking at delivery assessment in a COVID environment, we started looking at learning analytics. How do you ensure that the learning outcomes can be improved by using learning analytics to actually help the lecturers in managing the class outcomes? And the third one would be, as we move into a COVID environment or post-COVID environment, we began to increasingly look at gamification, to look at increasing learner focus and knowledge acquisition. We felt that traditional face-to-face learning may be useful up to a certain point of time, but gamification helps to actually focus the learner's attention on what we wanted to teach. The third area we felt was really critical was industry partnerships. as an educational institution, we cannot be as fast as industry. Industry will always be the latest, and they will actually be able to foresee miles ahead from us as an educational institution. So we felt that it was very important to engage industry closely. These are the major players. These are the leading players in their respective industries. How to bring them on board in 3 areas, either in co-developing programs with us, in co-delivery, and in co-assessment of the training program. So we began to seek out the major players in the various industry sectors, and then try to persuade them and work closely with us in coming through development of programs, delivery, and co-assessment. And the second part, in terms of industry partnerships, we felt it was also very important to actually build up enterprise capability in workplace learning. Frequently, the training by institutions alone cannot suffice. Most of the training is actually done at the company level as well. But how do we ensure that the enterprise capability is not forgotten and is not left to chance? So we actually set up a National Center of Excellence for Workplace Learning and began to work closely with companies to help build up their workplace learning capabilities so that we can, sustain the training after the training has been completed by us. And in the last part I want to mention is really on skills, reskilling and deployment. We felt that nothing comes to naught if the staff are not trained or continuously reskilled in order to ensure they can do the delivery. So what we do every year is that we do a sectoral mapping exercise. Every of our schools do a sectoral mapping. They project where are the skills or where are the trends that are going for the industry, and where then we map it to where the skills that we have in the workplace. If there are any gaps, if we want to close the gaps, how do we do it over a few years time frame? And then we systematically look at how to actually make sure that our staff continue to actually get upgraded along the way. The second part is really looking at flexible and agile deployment of staff. Traditional training hours or for work hours for the polytechnic staff is no longer 8:30 to 6. So we are flexible enough to know that sometimes training needs to be done in the evenings, and we will do so. And even sometimes on the weekends, where we actually have to do training to help industries who cannot release staff during work, the normal work days. And the last part I want to mention is that as we propel or go forward into a post-COVID environment, we are beginning to look at the 3 what we call FOWs. What is the future of work going to be like? What is the future of the workforce? And what is the future of the workplace? How do we address all the issues that are coming in? Where do we see the trends? And how do we ensure that we stay up to date and help to propel the workforce, preparing them for the future workplace and preparing for future work? And I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and Jung-Min Tan. I think the adaptive learning is one of the important topic in Hrd field right now. Also, I'm interested in this topic, and I'm currently some kind of researching regarding this. And you suggested strategies for an adaptive TVET system. Maybe I think it could help to prepare a coming digital transformation, especially focusing on learning. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, lastly, we are going to have one last presentation. This presentation will be given pre-recorded video by Siddiqui. The presenter is Nutjaman Siddiqui. He is an associate professor at Noakhar Science and Technology University in Bangladesh. His presentation title is Linking TVET with Industries in Bangladesh. Yeah, please watch this video. Yeah.
First of all, I would like to welcome all the participants who are present in my presentation. My name is Dr. Nutjaman Siddiqui. I'm associate professor and chairman, Department of Sociology, Noakhar Science Technology University. Before I do my presentation, I would like to express my sense of gratitude to Hrd Korea and World Bank for inviting me to deliver a lecture on linking TVET with industries in Bangladesh. I hope my lecture will come up with some new ideas with regard to linking TVET with industries in Bangladesh. that might be helpful in many countries like Bangladesh, where HRD is a major policy issue. Now I would like to start my presentation. I hope you will enjoy my presentation. TVET has long been recognized as a key component of HRD and a vital tool for socio-economic development. Moreover, TVET could be a powerful catalyst for achieving sustainable development goals by 2030, especially eradicating poverty, promoting lifelong learning opportunities, and creating employment and decent work for all. As such, like in other countries, TVET has become an integral part of Bangladesh HRD policies. However, TVET sector in Bangladesh has been facing a number of impediments, including skill shortage, skill gap, skill mismatch. That is the mismatch between supply of skills and demand for skills. While skill mismatch has negative impacts on the country's economy, the lack of alignment between TVET and industries in Bangladesh has not been yet highlighted in research. Moreover, to integrate TVET with employment in Bangladesh, it is necessary to find out suitable policies and approach that could link TVET with industries in Bangladesh. Therefore, the study was intended to investigate the following queries. Number one, to explore whether TVET is linked with industries in Bangladesh or not. To find out suitable policies and approach to TVET that could link TVET with industries in Bangladesh. Let's talk about methodology of my research. The study is basically qualitative in nature, which attempts to examine the linkage between TVET and the industries in Bangladesh from the viewpoint of the respondents, based on their personal observation experiences and shared understanding. While the research is principally qualitative, it considered both qualitative and quantitative data to gain a better understanding. A total of 12 respondents were selected for this study on the basis of purposes sampling from 11 government TVET institutions and TVET organizations which were connected with TVET policy making, implementation, and instructions. Primary data were collected through qualitative interviews with the respondents conducted by the researcher himself in April 2020. Secondary data were gathered from various relevant government publications, research reports, journal articles, conference paper, research paper, thesis, official statistics, and so on. Qualitative data generated from the interviews were analyzed and interpreted through making comparison, understanding underlying themes, linking concept or themes, and finding out the relationship among them. If you look at this table, you can find the major categories of responses we have derived from our qualitative interviews. So we can understand that the TVET in Bangladesh is not properly linked with industries in Bangladesh. So from our qualitative interviews, we actually we developed two themes. One is mutual collaboration between TVET institutions and industries, and the other one is public policy. If you look at this diagram, you can understand these components, I mean the features which we derive from our qualitative interviews reflect mutual collaboration between TVET institutions and the industry. We understand that if there is a mutual collaboration between TVET institutions and industry, that will help to link TVET with industries in Bangladesh. Second theme, we developed from our qualitative interviews, that is supporting public policy. Supporting public policy, I mean these components, I mean the features that we develop from our qualitative interviews that reflect supporting public policy. It means that if there is a supporting public policy, that will help to link TVET with industries in Bangladesh. Here we have proposed a theoretical model. We understand that if there is a mutual collaboration between TVET institutions and industries, if there is a supporting public policy in Bangladesh, that will help to create an enabling environment. This enabling environment will help to link TVET with industries in Bangladesh. Mutual collaboration between TVET institutions and industries involve a number of collaborative efforts that include joint participation in designing curriculum, in designing training, joint decision making, joint financing, focusing on workplace learning, undertaking joint research, organizing joint seminars and symposiums and workshops. If there is a mutual collaboration between Tibet institutions and industries, that will ensure a number of collaborative efforts. These collaborative efforts actually will help to reduce skill gap and to minimize skill mismatch. At the same time, these collaborative efforts can help the both parties. The industry can get skilled manpower in line with its skill requirements. On the other hand, Tibet institution can generate skilled workforce. At the same time, these two bodies, I mean these two actors can benefit from each other's by exchanging their knowledge, by exchanging their skills. If they collaborate with each other, if they undertake joint research, if they organize joint seminars on the development of production system, on the development of technology, on the development of production process, it will help the Tibet institutions to interact with industries more and more. So if there is a supportive public policy, of course, it will help to link Tibet with industries in Bangladesh. Supportive public policy actually involves several policy issues and government interventions that involve ensuring industries' participation in Tibet, basically in designing curriculum and training according to labor market needs and changing technology. Introducing public employment service, introducing German dual Tibet system, implementing national skill development policy, implementing national skill database, and so on. If government can ensure these policy issues in Bangladesh, it could help to minimize skill gap and skill shortage. Therefore, it will help to link Tibet with industries in Bangladesh. It also can help to link Tibet with employment in Bangladesh. Based on our empirical findings and available literature, actually we have proposed an approach that is known as partnership-based approach to Tibet. So partnership-based approach to Tibet actually is involve collaborative efforts between Tibetan institutions and industry on the basis of common vision, shared responsibility, mutual understanding, joint commitment, and mutual benefits. Actually, we propose this partnership approach to facilitate public-private partnership in Tibet in Bangladesh. We understand that if there is this kind of partnership-based approach in Bangladesh, it will help to link Tibet with industries in Bangladesh. So under this approach, actually we have presented 4 models, 2 models for non-formal Tibet and 2 models for formal Tibet. Here I like to add that each of the model actually reflects certain mode of collaboration between Tibetan institutions and industry on the basis of planned activity or on the basis of coordinated effort. First, I would like to focus on combined learning model. This model actually we have proposed for formal Tibet in Bangladesh. Combined learning model is a combination of school and workplace learning. It's actually a customized version of German dual Tibet system. We have proposed this approach or in model this model in our secondary education or higher secondary education. Under this model, a student is required to pursue general education for 1.5 years in some school, in some vocational schools, and undertake workplace learning in some industry to which the vocational school is attached. So it will connect school education with workplace learning. It will provide job-specific training. Therefore, it will help Tibet to be linked with employment. This model actually will help students to achieve both types of certificate. Number one is school certificate. Number two is skill certificate. So this certificate, I think, this model is very much effective if we want to link TVET with industries in Bangladesh. Second model that is also important, that is school-based apprenticeship or traineeship model. This model actually Australian employment-based training system. So this is a combination of school studies and apprenticeship. Under this model, a student is required to pursue school education alongside his workplace learning in some industry as a trainee. It will connect students with workplace learning. It will also allow the students to earn while learning. Therefore, it will help TVET to be linked with industry and to be linked with employment in Bangladesh. So the next two models actually we have proposed for non-formal TVET in Bangladesh. These two models are training by order model and zero period adaptation model. We understand that this model can be executed in Bangladesh. It is applicable for those students who have already completed secondary or higher secondary education in Bangladesh and are willing to join job market. So let's I would like to focus on first the training by order model. Under this model, industry decide what types of skill it requires. Curriculum and training are designed as per industry's needs. Industry finances the training cost. This model ensure customized training. Upon successful completion of this training, a student or a trainee may be employed in some industry. Therefore, TVET is linked with employment here. Second is zero period adaptation model. Zero period adaptation model. Under this model, a student is required to undertake job training in advance, so that they do not require any technical training soon after they are employed. This here TVET is designed as per labor market needs. It also combination of theory and workplace learning. Therefore, I think this model is also suitable if we want to minimize the gap between industry and TVET institutions. So finally, I would like to focus on conclusion. Bangladesh has made remarkable progress in recent years in socio-economic development. It is basically recognized as one of the economic success stories and has become a role model for development in terms of many socio-economic indicators and macroeconomic stability. However, its unprecedented success in socio-economic parameters may be overshadowed if skill development is not properly linked with employment through adopting proper policy and approach. As such, the study has proposed a partnership-based approach to TVET in order to link TVET with industries in Bangladesh. The study has argued that government should employ this approach in the form of public-private partnership in order to reduce its overall responsibility, provide demand-driven training, and ensure quality, transparency, accountability, and efficiency in TVET. If TVET is properly linked with industries in Bangladesh, it would contribute to the achievement of sustainable development goals. Thereby, it would ensure inclusive growth by creating employment opportunities for all and reducing poverty. And thank you, everyone. I hope you have enjoyed my lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for Siddiqui. Siddiqui is an alumni of Korea Tech, which I'm working for right now. And also President of HRD Korea is an advisor. Yeah. Thank you for your presentation. Lastly, we are going to have a Q&A and discussion session. However, we are already behind the schedule, so we can have a limited time. I asked to finish this session before the 12. So I think it is better, let me ask one question. After that, if you have another question, we can take it, or if we don't time, we are closed this session. I would like to ask a question. Especially, I have a question, Jack Min Tan. As I said, and I'm interested in adaptive learning system. Regarding adaptive learning, I believe that data is a really important thing in making adaptive learning systems. So could you tell me about what kinds of data you are gathering and how to manage that data efficiently? Especially, do you have any system in controlling the data management for Tibet system? Jung-Min Tan, are you ready?
Yeah, good morning, Prof. Lee. Yes, we are looking at the data of systems, and I'd like to share some data that we are collecting in terms of how our learners are coping. Let me share the first part in terms of the learning analytics. What we have done is that we have an AI engine that we have developed internally to actually use learning analytics to see whether how our students are coping and whether they understand the lectures we are doing. And the AI engine allows us to quickly do the assessment to see whether the student is able to understand what the concepts has been taught. And if not, then there can be immediate intervention quickly rather than waiting at the end of the program, that we typically again collect data to find out and understand whether the lectures have actually achieved the learning outcomes that we want to achieve and whether there were any difficulties that the students were facing.
Okay, thank you for reply. Maybe Pro, do you have any questions for the presenters? Yeah. Maybe there are not questions. Yeah. Okay. In June, maybe if you have any questions. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In this section, we talk about several important issues regarding coming after the post-COVID era, how to Tibet react to the kinds of things. So we have three, the presentation. After that, we have four other cases. Maybe these things are very helpful to go forward after pandemic situation in Tibet situation. So I'm very I'm very sorry we don't have enough time to discuss, and I would like to finish our session like this. Thank you for your active participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee, for moderating that fascinating discussion, really across Asia and even into Australia. We'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break next before we move on to our third and final theme of this forum. We'll see you in about 10 minutes. That's 12:05 Korea time. Attention please, we'll resume the 2021 ASEAN+3 Hrd Forum in 2 minutes. Please begin making your way to your seats. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. This is your 1-minute warning. We will be beginning in about 1 minute. If any of our attendees are outside in the halls, please make your way in now. Welcome back, everyone. Hope everyone had a wonderful break. Let's go ahead and begin our third and final theme of the forum, employment policies to protect vulnerable workers. This will be in 2 parts, and moderating this part of the program will be senior economist at the World Bank, Yoon Young Cho, who joins us via Zoom. Yoon Young, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. And just in advance, in case we do have any sporadic technical difficulties, we appreciate your patience through it. But the floor is yours, Yoon Young.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and magandang umaga for those who are connected from the Philippines. My name is Yoon Cho. As I introduced, I'm a senior economist at the World Bank based in Manila. I'm your moderator for this final session about the employment policies. Vulnerable workers have faced so many challenges in the labor market even before the pandemic. But pandemic hit them really hard. But the impact of pandemic on workers have not been even. Some were exposed to more risks and challenges. Others fared relatively better. And everyone wants to know how the countries have been really helping the vulnerable workers to gain resilience and recover from the pandemic shock and readjust and rebuild in the labor market going forward. So we are very much looking forward to this session and the case studies. As before, we have one presentation about the global and regional perspective, and we are having 3 presenters who will share the cases of Cambodia, Korea, and China. Very much looking forward to all this session. So let me introduce the first speaker, who is going to talk about the protection for vulnerable workers in the COVID situation. Ms. Mega Arena. While I'm introducing her, maybe organizer or speaker can upload their slide. Ms. Mega Arena is a head and assistant director of the Labor and Civil Service Division, Human Development Directorate of the ASEAN Secretariat. And we have Song Hyang Ai, Director of South Asia Ministers of Education and Organization, Regional Center for Technical Education Development, Cambodia. He's going to present the Cambodian case later. Professor Chan Lee, HRD professor from Seoul National University. He's going to present the Korean case. Professor Pang Shi, Director in Chinese Academy of Personal Science under Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security, and she's going to present the Chinese case later. So let me introduce you to the first speaker, Mega Arena. She is the head of Labor and Civil Service Division. Ms. Arena is responsible for the facilitation and coordination of ASEAN sectoral coordination on labor and migration. The areas of cooperation include human resource development, skills development and recognition, TVET, productive employment, and vulnerable populations and workers. She obtained her postgraduate degree on international relations from Universiteit van Amsterdam in 2003. So Ms. Mega Arena, this floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Yu Yong. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm following you all time zones I will mention. This is really a great opportunity to share with you all some of the ASEAN initiatives in response to the impact of pandemic and technology advancement to labor and employment. And so I would like to first thank the organizers, particularly Ministry of Employment and Labor of Korea, HRD Korea, and the World Bank. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me start by highlighting the broader picture of ASEAN by sharing with you some key outcomes of the rapid assessment that we conducted together with the Asia Foundation last year, which provides a snapshot on how the pandemic affected vulnerable groups in ASEAN and some key recommendations. Now that we are almost at the end of 2021, many of the situations described have happened in our region. But when this rapid assessment was conducted in early last year, next slide, please. Thank you. So when this rapid assessment was conducted in early last year, the report provided findings and projections that were fresh to ASEAN member states at that time, and it was timely as inputs to the governments in charting their responses to pandemic last year. So the rapid assessment cautions us that pandemic threatens to increase inequality and people falling into poverty in short time. The finding concluded that new poor was more in the cities where economic shutdowns and movement restrictions had resulted in immediate job losses. Therefore, given the limited resources, policy responses should be well targeted to most needed vulnerable groups, especially workers in informal labor markets who tend to be low-skilled workers. Next slide, please. Sectors hit hardest in the ASEAN region include tourism, hospitality, retail, and those who operate micro, small, and medium enterprises. The rapid assessment found that unemployment was higher in particular sectors, especially those with disrupted value chains. But employment opportunities also arise in new sectors in gig economy. The social distancing and movement restriction have led to greater demands for remote work. Therefore, we may say that skills development, especially on digital skills, is important not only for productivity and economic growth, but also for employability and resilience in the future. The rapid assessment underlined that the world of work and the notion of the workplace evolve more quickly than ever before, with online replacing face-to-face meetings in large sections of the workforce for the foreseeable future. Movement towards 4IR became more rapid as a protection against future crises. ASEAN is well placed to make that transition. Next slide, please. So here are some of the initiatives adopted by ASEAN. The labor ministers, for one, they agreed on the joint responses to the impact of COVID-19 on labor and employment in May last year, and you can find what are those joint responses. Those are translated into actions. Some of them are already ongoing now. Secondly, the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. Many of you may have heard about this. I will touch upon that after this. And also the Consolidated Strategy on 4IR for ASEAN, Declaration on Human Resources Development as a response to the changing world of work, and the newly established ASEAN-Tibet Council. Next slide, please. The ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework was adopted last year, commenced the process of joint efforts to recover with a whole of ASEAN approach. The framework provides comprehensive strategies and actions across the board in 5 areas, as you can see on the screen: health, human security, economic integration, digital transformation, and promotion of sustainability and resilience. Next slide, please. Yeah. So various initiatives are in the framework, including those aimed to develop skills and also in the areas of employment, such as the adaptation of TVET curricula to the post-COVID-19 future of work, documentation of business models that incorporate reskilling and upskilling of workers, sharing of information on measures to safeguard employment and support the unemployed in the most affected sectors, identification of regional gaps in existing policies to address labor concerns under new normal, such as work from home, managing performance during work from home, and so on. Follow up to the study on green job policy readiness is one of the priorities in ASEAN. Next slide, please. Now let me move on to the consolidated strategy on 4IR for ASEAN that was just adopted last week at the ASEAN Summit. This is a document that was developed based on an understanding that the 4IR, if managed well could offer opportunities for economy to become more competitive, livelihoods to improve, and also development to be more inclusive and sustainable. Turning those opportunities into reality requires initiatives and cooperation of all stakeholders. And therefore, the guideline was developed to provide policy guidance in building the ASEAN digital community. It covers 3 priority areas of technological governance and cyber security, digital economy, and digital transformation of society. Next slide, please. So I would like to highlight 2 ASEAN strategies in particular in relation to skills development. First, promote forward-looking human resources development through formal and continuing education. This includes the adoption of digital literacy skills trainings for secondary and vocational training programs in order to boost preparedness of traditional education systems. Second, establish digital inclusion to minimize digital divides. We acknowledge the importance of promoting digital skills among young people, women, and gig workers in particular, as such skills can greatly enhance their employability. My apologies, it seems like the font is not so clear. Maybe later when you receive the slides after the forum, you will be able to see it clearly. Next slide, please. On the ASEAN Declaration on Human Resources Development, there are 5 outcomes to be achieved, focusing on the promotion of lifelong learning culture, which is highly important and yet quite challenging to promote. It takes some time to be able to change mindset of all stakeholders and public. Improve inclusiveness in education and employment for all. Demand-driven competency and qualification to be promoted to meet the labor market demands, and more employment opportunities, and also sound policies and financing. So these are the key areas of declaration. And we have over 50 actions to translate this declaration for implementation in the next 10 years. Next slide, please. Apart from the content of the declaration, I would like to highlight the important process leading to its adoption. The declaration and the roadmap of actions were jointly developed by Labor and Education Ministries of 10 member states, together with the academe, business sector, and trade union. So there is a strong ownership from non-government partners. In fact, simultaneously, the business group formed a coalition called ASEAN Future Work Council. So this is a group of business sectors investing on TVET. The declaration called for the establishment of multi-stakeholder body to promote quality of TVET through better coordination, research, and innovation. And so in less than a year, ASEAN TVET Council was established. And we are pleased that this council is one of its kind because the members are coming from economic, labor, and education ministries, plus the academe business sector, represented by the ASEAN Future of Work Council that I mentioned, trade union, and youth group. So this ASEAN TVET Council is now operating. So the declaration is translated into actions in the roadmap, and you can find more information through the link that I provided earlier. There are many initiatives, such as those to promote higher investment on skills development, including by the industries, promotion of green skills, especially at TVET level, promotion of flexible training models, recognition of prior learning, and many more. We also emphasize the importance of improving the image or attractiveness of TVET for young people by introducing pathways from TVET to higher education and promoting career progression of TVET graduates. These are important measures apart from the strategies to boost the quality and responsiveness of TVET. Overall, I think after listening to the presentation since yesterday, I found that there are many commonalities on the areas of challenges and priorities that receive high attention in ASEAN and also in other countries and region. This is in a way an assurance that we all are on the same boat heading to the right path. And so this forum certainly provides a platform to learn from one another. And therefore, let me conclude my presentation by thanking all other speakers since yesterday and also today for sharing your great knowledge and insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arena, for excellent presentation. You thank all other presenters, but I wanted to return the thank to you because sitting in the Philippines and working on the Philippines labor market, I could resonate a lot with what you have just presented. We were jokingly saying that digital is a new normal and digital skills are new gold. But as you correctly mentioned, digital skills and changing nature of work is providing a lot of opportunities. But at the same time, digital divide, and there are multiple vulnerable populations who are lagging behind in the labor market with access to digital skills and digital infrastructure. So there are challenges out there. So how to promote these lagging or vulnerable workers to upskilled and reskilled to be adjusted in the labor market in the new era. And we can support the work from home and flexible work arrangement, but at the same time ensuring their productivity and ensuring their worker production, like for a lot of gig online workers or freelancers and all these workers, that's going to be very important. So the last part of your presentation, when you highlighted the not only whole of government approaches involving education, training, and labor agencies, but also whole of society approach involving business sectors and academics and trade union and youth groups, that was a really encouraging part of a message. So thank you so much. I might have more questions, but I will move on to the next case studies. I was informed by the host that before moving on to Cambodia, we are going to Korea first. So let me introduce the Korean case study presenter, Dr. Chan Lee. He's a professor in the Vocational Education and Workforce Development Program and the director of the Career Development Center at Seoul National University. Professor Lee is the author of multiple influential books regarding human resource development. He earned his master's degree and PhD degree in HRD from the Ohio State University in the United States of America. So Dr. Chan Lee, without further ado, the floor is yours.
It is my pleasure to meet with you. My name is Chan Lee, HRD professor at Seoul National University. So today's topic is employment policy, and I'm going to talk about especially vulnerable groups of people, how Korea responded to current situation to all those people who are including vulnerable groups of people, and how the working environment has been changed. From our research group at the Seoul National University, during the latter half of last year, and during the same period of this year, the research conducted during that time was released just last week. So the research result is just out. It is very fresh and hope it is helpful to you all. So in Korea, the level of severity related to COVID-19 took place as of the 23rd of February last year. And I would like to know how the COVID situation brought about a negative impact on job-seeking opportunities of vulnerable groups of people. In terms of employment, we have been emphasizing WAB, work-life balance. But today, I'm going to talk about work and learning balance for work-life balance. Because we need job in order to live a life. But for vulnerable groups of people, they do not have a job, meaning that it is very unlikely that they can strike a balance between work and life. So we have to think about how they can strike a balance between work and learning. There has been many research conducted on that. I'm going to introduce to you about that too. So I hope my research can also share the insight with Asean+3 members. As you can see from this graph, after COVID-19 situation got worse, when you look at the second, fourth, the quarter of the last year, you can see there's a dropping point, meaning that nobody was ready for COVID-19. So there was a huge dip down in terms of GDP. And when you look at the unemployment rate among vulnerable groups of people, that time when the GDP hit the bottom, you can see GDP of vulnerable groups of people jumped up. So all of us around the globe was hit by COVID-19, but the degree of shock felt by vulnerable groups of people are really big. So I believe that this very session is very meaningful for all of us to learn about that. When you look at groups of people who are seeking out jobs, after COVID-19 situation got worse, vulnerable groups of people suffered highest unemployment rate, and as such trend continues after each quarter, then vulnerable groups of people reach a point where they just give up on seeking out job opportunities. From country to country, you can see how trend was. You can see informal learning average weekly hours per worker. Ironically, in Korea is at the far right-hand side. It means that Korea spends a small number of hours for informal learning. It means that formal learning hours is very high for Korea. But the function of informal learning can be bigger for vulnerable groups of people. So I think this is something that the central government needs to take into consideration when it establishes policies. Under these circumstances, WLB index has like 100 criteria, but I would like to especially focus on a couple of criteria. Because working environment has been changed a lot after COVID-19. Work and learning balance became ever more important. The survey on current status on that was analyzed and was released just last week from our research team. That same research was conducted last year on 23rd on the February and also June and also toward the end of October last year and also this year, the same month as well. As the COVID situation prolongs, there were a whole lot of a different way of working came into place. And flexible thinking topped the list, but that is irrelevant to COVID-19. Many workers wanted their leaders to have a flexible mind. As the COVID situation became worse, working pattern was changed, and there was a criteria where the demand was doubled. Please look at the red bar graph, data using. So expectancy for data using was doubled, and from last year to this year. Why do you think it is happening? Because I think this is definitely we need to take into consideration for vulnerable groups of people. As remote work continues, it means that individual worker needs to use data by themselves more and more. So in the labor market, that means the labor market becomes more knowledge-based. As demand for labor to use the data needs to be increased, and it means that learning agility is ever more needed for workers in Korea. So the vocational capability development for vulnerable groups of people and for also other workers have been dramatically changed like this. When we looked up the result, the groups of people who are exposed to flexible working hours and also remote work are different from one another. It is different from the ranks and also position that workers are holding. So in this graph, there are industries which cannot do non-contact work. Healthcare and social assistance industry cannot do the remote work. So by different industries and by different occupation, we need to take all this into consideration for different targeting. And by each city and province, there's also a gap between different regions, for example, with Seoul and different regions. So rather than unilaterally applying this trend, maybe different targeting is needed for different industries, manufacturing industry, care industry, and also for different reasons, and also for workers who are holding different positions and ranks. Ironically, there are different types of work, at-home work, flex-time work, and part-time work. Trend is very different from people to people by gender, by positions, and by where they live. As workers are older, it is less likely that they are engaged in flex-time work. Older people are likely to hold a higher position, but they less like flex-time work. It is related to digital transformation, and of course, it could be related to expectation that they get from their company. There are so many different factors playing into this. So, regardless of whether you are vulnerable groups of people or not, there are different preference over flex-time work. So you might think that flex-time work, that is something that everyone would hail, but that's not the case. There are people who do not like flex-time work, and also digital literacy capability can bring about a huge impact on this. It is not limited to IT industry. When you do the competency development for vulnerable groups of work, I think digital literacy needs to be definitely included in curriculum for vulnerable groups of people. So when we are exposed to the COVID-19 situation, the vulnerable group are hit hardest. The unemployment rate is steeply rising. When it is continued, then they easily give up on job seeking. So the importance of it is really high, but it is really imperative when we implement the policies to respond to this. So that's why we have to put the vulnerable group at the foremost point in developing policies. But in such cases, we also have to consider their job type, their age differences, and their occupation differences. Depending on that, the capacity necessary are different. Those should be considered when we develop policies. For that, we are further define the categories. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I heard from the organizer that Professor Chanli has to leave soon, but I have a very quick clarification question. So in your presentation, you looked into vulnerable groups, vulnerable workers, performance due to COVID, there are different indicators. How did you define the vulnerable groups here? Can you do a quick clarification answer?
Yes. So here, when we are defining the vulnerable groups, the breadwinner and the group, when it is a female, and the disabled, and also there's a specialty in Korea, those defectors from North Korea who are settled in Korea from North Korea, and those with lower academic backgrounds and those aged people, those are categorized as the vulnerables. If it satisfies your question, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for clarification. Very good to know. This is very in line with a lot of research that has been done in the developed countries and developing countries in terms of the exposure to the shock, as well as their work from home abilities. It varies by different sectors, even within the sectors, different occupations and tasks. And by workers' characteristics, their ability to adjust in the labor market and learning, that's absolutely important message. And I'd like to learn more about the work-learning balance index. Thank you so much for your presentation. So we are moving to Cambodia case. So we have this presenter from, sorry. So we have Director So-Hyang Ai. He's a director of Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization, Regional Center for Technical Education Development in Cambodia. Director So-Hyang Lee is working on a lot of areas related to employment and labor, migrant workers, TVET, and curriculum development and HRD development. Dr. Ai earned a master's degree and PhD in human resource development from Korea University of Technology and Education, Korea Tech in 2020. So some of your colleagues and former professors must be here connected. But without further ado, the floor is yours, Dr. Ai.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm So-Hyang Ai, Director of Hrd, working for Technical Vocational High School in the 11th CIMO country member. Today, I'm honored to share with you the topic on employment and technical education reform in Cambodia. I have 4 points to share with you. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4, Entrepreneurship Development Fund, we call EDF. As you know, Cambodia is the most useful country. Around 60% of population below 25 years old. And to reform technical education, the government formulate general and technical high school. We have 2 streams, general stream and technical stream. in order to provide job and skill to the youth, because of the most population of Cambodian people are youth. And we introduce school to work approach to them. It means that we encourage fresh graduate, especially youth graduated from TVET institution, to go to work directly. But according to the empirical study founded by Jeffrey Mason yesterday morning, that most Cambodian graduates do further study, not go to the labor market directly. So we try to introduce this approach and system in order to promote and disseminate the importance of TVET and skill to our youth and community. We also host National TVET Day annually to promote their importance and understanding of TVET. And we host National Career and Productivity Fair in order to engage the public and private partnership, especially local community, perception, student, and the public, to be involved actively in TVET development. If we compare to the region, the proportion of students in secondary education enrolled in vocational program, as you see, Cambodia percentage for students involved in vocational program is a little bit higher than Laos PDR, than Myanmar, and the most country enrolled in vocational program is Indonesia. You see the region. For technical education, you see the level for participation among the working age population increased from 7.7 million in 2009 to 8.3 million in 2015. It is the increasing number. And less than 7% of workers completed high school, especially grade 12. It's the small number of youth. If we compare to other regions, especially the Asian Youth Development Index, Cambodia Youth Development Index is 0.3, a little bit higher than Laos PDR. And if we see the overall perspective of Asian Youth Development Index is nearly 0.6 for the region. After working for a while with the work experience, but without required skill and formal education qualification, especially the garment worker, the construction workers, informal economic worker, want to really enter education formally in order to be qualified for further education formally to get this basic, we call basic education equivalency program, we call B, is formulated for them to provide alternative and flexible education platform for youth for a purpose of encouraging them to do further study at general and technical high school or TVET school to be reskilled and upskilled. Why do we do this? According to the high dropout rate at grade 7, grade 8, and grade 9 in Cambodia. So in order to provide them the flexible and alternative learning opportunity for them, because 46% of students drop out at primary school from 2015 2016, and 17% at lower secondary level that the student drop out. It is the solution to the problem. And for subject for BIP, we have math level 1, Khmer literature, chemistry, computer, English, entrepreneurship, math level 2, tour guide, fundamental employment skill, final and trial exam. It is the self-paced learning that students and dropout can learn themselves. If they access learning, they are given the access to free internet by Smart Asean to allow them to take on the cost of their interest. Let me cover employment policy. Employment policy, if we see that Jeffrey Marshall mentioned yesterday morning that most of the graduates do further study, not go to the labor market directly. As we see, estimated 27,000 new interns to the labor market annually. But if we see 60,000 students graduated from Tibet institution, not go to the labor market directly. Let me focus on National Employment Agency. It's one of the fundamental employment service, such as matching job seeker with job vacancy. For example, 5,466 people to get job through NEA. In 2018, NEA has registered 15,485 job seekers through its website, collected job announcement for 83,466 job positions to provide job information via phone to 35,295 job seekers for them. And NEA also provides 20,000 local jobs for Cambodian migrant workers from Thailand in 2021. Because of the pandemic disruption in Thailand, we try to match them with the local job, working with the local authority, local community to find out a job for them. According to the research study done in 2019, found that Cambodian migrant workers in Korea that hardworking, enduring further study and running their own businesses. It means that if the labor contract terminated, they will go back to Cambodia and do further study, or they run their own businesses at the country, and after saving some budget and money. If we compare to the region, a number of self-employed workers is expected to increase by over 43 million in a recent year. And the informal economy is likely to account for 60% of the Asian total employment by 2015. And if we compare to the region as well, we see the workforce by sector, for the Asian region for service, it's nearly 50% for agriculture, over 30% industry, around 20%. But if you compare to the Cambodia, the workforce employment distribution in Cambodia from 2017, 2018, and 2019, the service is growing gradually, agriculture is decreasing gradually, and the industry is growing gradually. I would like to introduce Skill Development Fund, SDF. Skill Development Fund is the new initiative of the government. It is a training fund in the purpose of delivering budget scheme to private enterprises directly to train existing and future employees as part of reskilling and upskilling system, in addition to the normal government budgetary channels for capacity building program. The main goal of SDF is to enhance partnership between private public sector in terms of skill demand and supply. It is the answer to the empirical study found by Mr. Jeffrey Marshall yesterday morning, that lack of engagement with the private sector in involving in Tibet development. For invested annual fund is $5 million for this fund. It is the process of skill development fund. There are at least 12 trainees for each course that can be technical or soft skill training course for them. So far, the committee has got 62 projects in the amount of $1.7 million, accommodating nearly 4,000 employees, trainees. And the total length of training course can be from 2 weeks to less than 18 months for each course. The unit cost provided for each is up to $2,000 per participant. It means that the government provides the budget, but the budget not cover the capital budget like the building, providing equipment, just recurrent costs and training fee for the trainer. And the process of getting the fund. The first one is the proposal preparation and submission. Number two, the committee review proposal and make site visit if necessary to make a short list. Number three, committee submit shortlisted candidates to executing agency for a final approval. Number 4, the project management unit discloses the list of successful proposals to the parties. And finally, successful proposal will be contacted for contract signing. It is the final one. And in order to measure training outcome tangibly, some minimum key performance indicators, we call KPI, are highlighted for evaluation as follows. The first one, dropout rate of each course is equal or less than 20% of total participants for large enterprises, and equal or less than 25% for small and medium enterprises. Number 2, 3 months after the training course, employment rate should be or more than 75% of the total enrolled participants. Number 3, after 3 months of course completion, current employees who are trainee must have a salary or wage increase at least 10% of the total amount for both large enterprises and small and medium enterprises, SME. And finally, after 3 months of course completion, successfully for pre-employment, future employee must get at least 110% of minimum wage of garment sector. The minimum wage of garment sector is around $193 a month. Skill Development Fund again, the success story that we got now, more training proposals submitted, a number of trainees are enlarged, more and more trainees interested in our program. A majority of trainees are happy to learn new skills with hope of getting suitable salaries, wage, or they can be self-employed in the future. More private sector representatives are satisfied to work with TVET institutions because we try to engage them, to match them together. And the curriculum and work are linked properly in terms of TVET curriculum. Let me introduce another fund we call Entrepreneurship Development Fund. It is the fund that we help employer. We support future employer of employee. It is found in 2019. Entrepreneurship Development Fund, or we call EDF, is a government trust fund supporting entrepreneurs, innovative startup, potential SME, and partnering institutions who will implement any innovative activity and create economic value added in the Cambodian economy. Number 1, the purpose of it is to promote capacity of the potential SME and innovative startup. And number 2, cultivate entrepreneurial culture and attitude, especially among Cambodian youth. Invested annual fund is $5 million for this one. And we focus on ICT, agro, processing, service, especially tourism, manufacturing, etc. Why do we create EDF? Because of the weak entrepreneurial ecosystem, limited access to finance, especially for startup, for future employer or employee, lack of coordination, poor market network and information, and shortage of skilled workers. For EDF, supporting SME and startup on 6 domains. The first one, provide training, skill mentoring, marketing and networking, product development, legalization, helping the process of document processing and other. Operating principle, the number 1 is to ensure synergy and efficiency of stakeholder interaction, budget based on key performance indicator, delivering programs through public-private partnership approach and balance ecosystem need and program objective. For this one as well, we have 27 potential startups and SME awarded a co-matching grant in the amount of $378,500 for business continuity if they want to strengthen their existing business activity and business development project. And if we compare to the region, it means that startup firms are a key driver of innovation, job creation, and economic growth. In 2018, it was reported that at least 5,800 active startups were operating in the Asian region, including e-commerce, fintech, enterprise solution, big data, and consumer goods and services. The success, the key achievement in 2020 for the fund: number one, for incubation and acceleration program; number two, digital adoption program; number three, to access to finance program; number four, one product development program; and number five, digital skill training program. Finally, let me conclude that the Cambodian government tried to harmonize, to coordinate tripartite engagement between employer, TVET institution, and employee together for skill development, especially the relevant and engaged supervising ministry working for TVET, especially Ministry of Labor and Vocational Training, covering all kinds of TVET systems, and Ministry of Education focus on high school, because general technical high school. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your excellent presentation. I think there is a wide recognition and consensus that skills development is such an important issue, but all the time the challenges are the resources. Where do we find money? So it's interesting to see all these funds to support certain initiatives. It'd be really interesting to see some of the similar funds, cross-country comparisons between Cambodia and other countries that have already established such funds. Without further ado, let me move on to the next presentation, our last one. And a lot of people may be hungry for lunch, but we have another interesting case study here. Let me introduce Director Pang Shi. Dr. Pang Shi is the Director of the Employment and Entrepreneurship Research Division of Chinese Academy of Personal Sciences under Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security. Dr. Pang's research focuses on the field of employment, entrepreneurship, and policy evaluations. She obtained a PhD in management from Beijing Normal University. She later undertook further research work at School of Policy and Management of Tsinghua University as a postdoctoral fellow. Floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Maybe I'm the last speaker this morning, so I think I should move quickly so everyone can catch the lunchtime. So I will start. Okay. I'm from Chinese Academy of Personnel Science under Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security of the People's Republic of China. I'm very pleased to share some practice and experience of China here. And as we all know, COVID-19 has caused a severe impact on the global economic and social functioning and brought unprecedented challenges to the global labor market, especially to young people, including those with lower skills. It's a common task for Asia, China, Japan, and the Republic of China to stabilize and promote employment more effectively, especially for young people with lower skills, and ensure that everyone enjoy the opportunities of the 20th century. In this context, I think it's very, very significant for us to discuss solutions together. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, the Chinese government have given top priority to employment in economic and social development, made great efforts to strengthen policy supply to promote employment. Chinese policies and measures to develop skills and promote inclusive employment mainly include the following 5 efforts. First, implementing a vocational skills operating campaign. China has implemented the 3-year vocational skill operating campaign since 2019. In 2019 and 2020, more than 40 million people have received subsidized training which is a considerable number. To improve the quality of training, we have designated 2020 as the year of skills improvement quality, focusing on the extending the training time reasonably, real name management, and making training more targeted and effective. And the second, large vocational skill campaign. Last year, we held the first national vocational skill competition, which is the nationwide vocational skill competition with the highest specifications, the largest number of the projects, the largest score, and the highest level. Since the founding of the People's Republic of China, the competition has encouraged more and more young people to become skilled. And third, developing new occupations. We have released more than 28 new occupations in 3 batches. Some occupations, such as online market, delivery personnel for online orders, online learning consultant, they have put their personnel to good use in COVID-19 control. This will play an important role in improving the employment structure and guiding corporators in personnel recruitment and management. In the picture, we can see the girl. She is an online market. And fourth, strengthening internship and practical training for college graduates. We have strengthened job skills training, new vocational training, suitable for college graduates to support them
대학
improving their ability to develop their skills.
졸업자들에게 이들이 새로운 직업을 찾을 수 있도록
Sorry.
Please go ahead. I think the issue was reserved.
Okay. So last year we selected high quality technical internship positions for maybe 330,000 interns to increasing their practical experience. And the fifth, providing online skills training for poverty-stricken workers and children from poverty-stricken families. China has launched a large-scale online free vocational training program as part of its effort to improve workers' vocational skills and facilitate power alleviation. Focus on poverty-stricken areas, we have encouraged the position of free vocational training for poverty-stricken workers by purchase project services and subsidize their living expenses during training so as to increase the preparation of the poverty-stricken trainees in poverty-stricken workers. So I will share a case of the local practice. So it's a case of new type of corporate apprenticeship. China has focused on training skills training for young workers and roll out a new type of corporate apprenticeship system. So one of the biggest company in China, Chinese first heavy industry company, which is located at Heilongjiang province in the northeast of China. Now, it developed a practical training manuals for 14 types of work. Every new employee is assigned a mentor from corporate who teaches, helps, and guides him. A mentor will receive a monthly allowance about 400 yuan, and a student will receive a bonus allowance at least 3,000 yuan after passing the annual assess. So it is reported that in 2020, about 86 corporators and 41 training institutions in Heilongjiang province have participated in the new apprenticeship training. About 2,700 employees to participate in the program in nearly 70 types of work. So this is one of the classical case of local in China. So as a result of this effort, the number of skilled workers in China has reached 200 million, about 26% of the total employment. Among them, there are more than 50 million high-skilled workers, 28% of the total skilled workers. COVID-19 is still spread around the world. Chinese President Xi Jinping put forward the important initiative of building a community with a shared future in China's neighborhood. In this regard, we would like to propose the following. First, we need to promote inclusive economic growth and create more jobs opportunities. Second, we need to strengthen cooperation in the global labor market and the research on new issues of skill training. Third, we need to share good practice in promoting inclusive employment and explore effective ways to solve these global challenges. We are confident that as long as we are united and work together, we will overcome the current difficulties and build a better labor world. That's all for my presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. What a great presentation and excellent summary. The final slide of suggestions are telling everything that I wanted to say, but thank you so much. Now we can move on to question and answers, Q&A sessions. Sorry.
Oh, I think you are back. We were having
All
some
right.
audio issues there. Yeah. Please
Can you
go
hear
ahead.
me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know where I was lost, but I was really praising the final presentation and excellent summary and suggestions. And we are now moving on to Q&A sessions. And I'm going to ask one very quick question for each presenter while all the participants are thinking about some of the questions you may have for the presenters. So first question goes to first presenter, Dr. Rena. As mentioned, I really enjoyed your presentation, and the countries in ASEAN area, we really share some of the similar challenges and opportunities as well. And due to the COVID-19, there have been a lot of nimble online skills training and a lot of opportunities as well. We haven't really touched upon the international, regional migration issues. Some of the migrants were also part of vulnerable workers and populations because many of them were repatriated. Sitting in the Philippines, the migrants' struggles are very evident here too. So, in this COVID-19 situation and very proliferating online and other education and training opportunities, how ASEAN Secretary sees the labor mobility and skills mobility. How can workers get kind of credentials from these training opportunities that can be really transferable to other labor market in ASEAN? That may be slightly over beyond the scope of your presentation, but you touched upon some of the initiatives that ASEAN has done. So I was intrigued by the presentation, but maybe you can think about it. The second question goes to Dr. Ai about the interesting funds, especially the skills development fund. I wanted to know about the contribution, who is providing the contribution between the government and private sector and workers themselves. What I see challenging is that government fiscal space is limited, so government financing is going to be quite challenging. At the same time, if you rely on private sector, usually the large and kind of successful corporations are paying, but those who are really in need of this kind of training opportunities are, small and medium enterprises that may have not contributed to these funds so much, individual workers as well. So how do you build a social consensus? Who is paying for what purpose? So that's something I wanted to ask, how Cambodia overcame that kind of challenge. The final quick question about the China case, Dr. Peng, is that whenever I hear about the Chinese cases, I'm just very much impressed by the scale of it, like millions of training and etc. But similar to the first question, a lot of online training and a lot of opportunities. But when you are presenting the online training, the picture shows some healthcare workers. So there are certain occupations and tasks that are very difficult to teach online. So how would you overcome the kind of challenges in this situation? So these are my questions. And if I receive more questions from the audience and participants, I will share with you. But shall we go to Dr. Arena first?
Thank you, Yun Yung. I think your question is really intriguing. I think it can lead to another forum to discuss the matter, because this is very interesting. It has been discussed many times by different stakeholders. Not easy to find the best solution. And in ASEAN, there are ongoing initiatives of mutual recognition of skills, particularly in the selected 8 high-skill professions, and also the ongoing process of qualification reference framework comparability with the national qualification systems where exist. And so 8 member states already did their referencing process. But these are processes that take time. And we know in reality, I think many employers and workers, they continue to the mobility recruitment without following through the recognition of certification that they have in hand. And so how can we make a system that is faster for recognition, at the same time acknowledge that the need to upgrade skills and reskilling is in high demand, and skills are also evolving much faster than before. And so I think the involvement of employers is really important. How can employers support this recognition by, for example, issuing certification, recognizing the skills obtained during job, so that that kind of recognition can be fast issued and really helpful to workers if they are seeking employment in other companies or sectors. So I think the role of employers is really important, especially for migrant workers on that matter. And because we know that in ASEAN region, I think majority of migrant workers are still at the medium and lower skills. And so formal certification from formal education is really still a challenge for many. On-the-job training, skills during employment, I think those are important practical skills that need proper recognition. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Shall we go to Dr. Ai?
Thank you so much for your important question. So impressive to me. As I told you, that Skill Development Fund is the initiative by the government to support employer, to match employer. For skill For entrepreneurship development fund, support employer, skill development fund, we support employee or future employee. How can Cambodia support financially? Because Cambodia is a developing country. Actually, we have the ambition to invest $100 million for 2 funds. The government create SME bank because small and medium enterprise bank investing the money as a capital or total money, but we set $5 million each year for 5 years as a pilot plan for the government to invest in the two funds for that. How can we engage the private sector engagement? We provide them incentive. For example, for new and existing SME, we provide exemption tax on profit. We call TOP with few conditions. Number 2, we provide exemption on prepayment of profit tax and minimum tax. So finally, we provide special deductible expenses with few conditions. So because of time, I cannot go detail into each one. It is that we try to engage the participation of the private sector for that. And according to the survey, we asked our trainer, our trainees, our future employee for this program. They are happy, they are satisfied to work with us. Just they invest their time, their effort, but the money injected by the government because it is initiated by the government. We try to involve the private sector representative, especially the boss or the well-known employer in Cambodia. Private sector, public sector representative, and international representative, international organization to be the committee in order to regulate, to manage the fund effectively. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your insight. Last but not least, Dr. Peng.
Thank you, moderator. And I think that's a very, very good question. And so I'm glad you noticed the picture about the training in China. The pictures are the real situation of the skill training in China in every local province and instruction. So about your question, so I want to show you that how China carry on the vocation training online. So that's very difficult, just like what you mentioned. So in China, we have government unit to carry on, to in charge of the vocational training. It's under the Ministry of Human Resource and Social Security of the People's Republic of China. And we have so many government unit in each province in China. So we can carry on the situation, the system of the vocational training directly. So that's the system. We have government unit in each province. And so we built a nationwide net across each province during China, all the China around. So we issued a guidebook for vocation training to keep and improve the standard, how to teach the employee, how to treat the young worker. So we keep the one standard. Yeah. So I think this system is very helpful. Keep the standard and qualification and assess the goal of the training for every employee and the trainer. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think we have reached to the end of the session. Through this session, we learned about different government initiatives and lessons learned to really support the vulnerable population and workers in the changing labor market, especially due to the COVID-19. And we hope to see more and more knowledge exchanges like this HRD forum to further brainstorm how to support vulnerable workers in this changing labor market going forward. Thank you so much for all the excellent presentations and discussions, all the presenters, and thank you so much for your participation. Unless there is any burning question, I think I can conclude this session. Is it okay?
Yes, I'll take
Can I
it
move
from
the
here,
floor to the
Yoon
floor?
Young.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yoon Young Cho of the World Bank Group, as well as all of our esteemed speakers for the insightful and wonderful discussion on protecting vulnerable workers through employment policies. May I ask everyone to just give them a round of applause? And we are now approaching the end of this 2021 Asean+3 Hrd Forum. Closing remarks will be delivered by HRD Vice President Young Hyun Kim. But first, please help me in welcoming Daniel Dilitsky. He's the Regional Director of the World Bank for his closing remarks.
It is a great pleasure for me to be here today to give the closing remarks at the 2021 Asean+3 Hrd Forum. I have had the privilege to be involved in the previous two forums and seen for myself the engagement of the participants and the learning that has taken place. I would like to sincerely thank the Ministry of Employment and Labor of the Republic of Korea and HRD Korea for co-organizing this year's forum. Your continuous support for a number of years has been the foundation of a strong and successful partnership. I also want to thank my World Bank Group colleagues who organized the forum, including Lipin Xiao, Hyun Kim, Tianshu Kang, and Mary Dowling. Finally, thanks are especially due to all this year's participants who have invested time, energy, and commitment to sharing experiences and learning from others. With the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, the forum explored the future of skills development and employment by discussing three main themes. First, the skills gap identified using the World Bank's severe workforce development research at country, regional, and school levels. Second, innovative solutions for building a green, resilient, and inclusive TVET system. And third, employment policy and services to support the vulnerable workforce. We must remember that without further efforts to rebuild better TVET and employment systems, those innovative solutions developed during the recent crisis will be short-lived and unsustainable. While the rapid shift to distance and hybrid learning allowed for continued vocational education and training, the pre-existing social and digital divides deprived the most marginalized groups and put them at risk of falling further behind. Fortunately, we have also witnessed from this forum the potential to accelerate inclusive training and employment via digital transformation in the region. I believe that the discussion and knowledge sharing from the forum will further facilitate building crisis-proof systems, ensuring better preparedness and resilient growth. Going forward, the World Bank Group will continue to explore more opportunities to collaborate with you all to enhance innovation and build back better from COVID-19. I hope that we can meet again in person soon. Once again, let me thank all the participants for the success of this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, for those sentiments. And finally, please help me in welcoming HRD Korea Vice President Young Hyun Kim with his closing remarks.
Good afternoon. I am Yang Kim, Vice President for the Competence Development and International Cooperation at HRD Korea. The 2021 Asean+3 Hrd Forum has come to successful conclusion after 2 days and 3 sessions exploring the theme toward green, resilient, and inclusive growth, building back better through the skills development and employment. I had a concern about event because the last year there was a hybrid format combining in-person event with the virtual components. But I am glad to such a successful result. First of all, I'd like to express my great appreciation to all participants this year, especially the experts from around the world for the sharing your precious experience, wisdom, and insight into the future. Also, to the officials from the World Bank Group, including Regional Director Mr. Daniel Doluchki, who is online attendance now, for their report in making this event happen. I also would like to say thank you to the Asian Secretariat, China, and Japan for their continued support and keen interest. I said in my closing address of last year that COVID-19 has changed everything around the world. 1 year on, amid an unrelenting virus wave, the global response has been achieving a global gradual recovery from the pandemic. This year, Forum has provided a meaningful platform to discuss the fourth industrial revolution and the future jobs, innovation in Tibet systems, as well as the Green Tibet program, which is another issue in the new normal era, by bringing together education specialists and officials in labor and employment from around the world to discuss the future of HRD. Even though 2 days was not long enough, we could discuss lots of subjects in here. First, a wide range of opinions were shared on Tibet institutions' responses against the rapid change in Tibet environment due to COVID-19, an analysis of the vulnerable workers and support policy for them. Above all, in-depth discussion with regards to developing a green, resilient, and inclusive Tibet system, which is the new value raised by the new normal, has enabled us to envision the direction, although vaguely, that Tibet should pursue. Distinguished participants, at the closing remark of the last year's forum, I emphasized the need to expand the social safety net to respond to the threat by the COVID-19 and the creation of more non-contact skills training contents during the first industrial revolution technologies. I also stressed that each country should increase the flexibility and timeliness of the Tibet policies. This forum demonstrated to me that many countries have taken action in line with my vision, which delighted me personally. In conclusion of the 2021 Asean+3 Hrd Forum, I would like to wrap up with a reminder that the forum has given us a task to draw a blueprint in order to build a green, resilient Tibet system and build back better through employment and skills development. Thank you all for joining us to the end, and I wish you good health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. I would like to take this opportunity to invite all of our participants online and offline to partake in an online survey of the forum. The Asean+3 Hrd Forum Secretariat will be sharing a link for that survey form to the chat boxes on Zoom as well as YouTube Live. So please take a couple minutes to let us know what worked for you with this forum and what we can do better for forthcoming ones. This year's forum was designed as a knowledge-sharing roundtable as we collectively craft the way forward for green, resilient, and inclusive growth in the future of work. On behalf of our organizers, South Korea's Ministry of Employment and Labor, HRD Korea, and the World Bank, we hope that the past 2 days of discussions and presentations were valuable for you, that you are taking away with actionable ideas as we move forward. We are grateful for your participation all the way to the end, and we look forward to welcoming you back again here next year for more robust discussions. Thank you so much. I've been Eunice Kim. 감사합니다. See you next year. 수고하셨습니다. 1시 반 이내 끝냈네요. 수고하셨습니다.
너무 잘해주셨어요. 고맙습니다. 저희가 사진 찍어 보내드릴게요.